I think to get into this topic of optimizing nutrition and hydration, especially when we're referring or considering how do we optimize your nutrition to help with performance, one of the first things we probably need to get into is what is a healthy eating diet? What is healthy? So let's go ahead and just go over a few things that I think will be beneficial as far as underscoring in a healthy diet. I mean, there's a lot of different diets out there. We can get into the weeds, paleo versus clean versus keto, that type of thing. But I think what would be beneficial here is if we just got into what do they all have in common and we can consider to be healthy. So that's what we're going to just summarize here real quickly. If we get into specifics on what we need to eat, probably less in what kinds of foods. Well, definitely the processed foods, just because of their association to diabetes and heart disease and a lot of other diseases, and obesity and difficulty maintaining an ideal weight. So processed foods are definitely something we don't want to necessarily demonize, but we definitely want to limit. And in the typical American diet, there's much too much excess in the processed food eating. When we're looking at oils used in cooking, the corn and soybean oils, we may want to do less. There's a ratio of omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids, and these have the omega-6, and we tend to eat too much in that area, according to some research, and too much typically of anything actually can be a problem, but the omega-6 tends to be associated with inflammatory response, and so it's something to keep an eye on as far as making sure that you're not overdoing it. Some would say mixing your oils so you have about 50% with omega-6 and 50% omega-3 is not a bad goal. And then obviously trying to keep your saturated and hydrogenated fats. Hydrogenated are things like margarine, where it's been infused with hydrogen atoms, which is causing the hardening of the fat. So those are all considered to be risk factors, high saturated fat for heart disease and stroke. And again, we're not necessarily saying no saturated fats, but probably want to limit the amount. And then sugars and sweets, again, more in the processed line would be something we want to limit in the diet for a number of reasons, including better weight control and inflammatory responses and gut issues and that type of thing. So what can we eat more, or what should we maybe focus on eating more of? Whole foods, anything that hasn't been wrapped and processed and packaged, is probably something we don't get enough of. So putting the whole foods into the diet is typically considered a healthy diet. And then your vegetables and fruits, 5 a day minimum. Even more so the vegetables than the fruits would be a good thing to shoot for. And then quality proteins, especially if you're trying to control weight or you're working out and working hard, either in the weight room or high volume endurance training. Putting more protein in the diet can be very beneficial. So higher protein diets are usually considered to be a healthy component to your diet. And then the monounsaturated or some of those omega-3 high fatty acid oils are listed here. So these are some of the good healthy alternatives for your fats and oils. And then what do we need to make sure we're getting enough of? We typically are, especially if we're low on our fruits and vegetables, and if we're limiting carbohydrates, we need to be concerned about getting enough fiber. And if our diet is off, typically we're going to have issues with vitamins and minerals being lower than they should be as far as your consumption. So that's where you might consider supplementation, but ideally you're trying to get your healthy diet to provide the vitamins and minerals that you need. Do we get enough calories? So if you are training and training high volume, or anybody who's training to lose weight, we want to make sure that we're not restricting calories too heavily while we're trying to train effectively. So usually not more than 500 calories below what you're actually burning. In other words, your intake shouldn't be more than 500 below what you're burning if you want to be able to perform in your exercise and stay healthy as you exercise. And then stay hydrated. Again, anything to excess can be a problem. So you don't want to overhydrate. That's why it's probably a good rule of thumb is to get your sweat rate so that you know the hydration level and replacement that you're going to need from exercising, especially longer events or on hot days. So we do have a sweat rate tool that you can use, and you'll find in this section. But again, here's the rule of thumb. Typically about 0.5 times your body weight would be your ounces of water per day. So that's a rough estimate. And then if you're doing especially prolonged exercise, about 12 ounces every 30 minutes in addition to that. Okay, so these are the fundamentals, probably the foundations of what we might consider to be a healthy diet. And I thought you might be interested in this as a fun video talking about a clean diet. Is it really all it's wrapped up to be? And again, we are talking, and it is important to be healthy, and if we consider that clean eating, this all clean eating, then I think we're on target. But you can go to the excess. So this is a good video, gets into a lot of detail on how to look at the diet and maybe look at it with a little more flexibility and not trying to get too rigid on the rules here.